Tanshe Kiowao, Pitakwe, hello, everyone, and welcome in to our 25-26 Language Program Application Process Information session today. Before we kind of dive into the topics of our session today, I just wanted to take a moment to welcome and acknowledge everyone in this room. I just wanted to say that we are grateful to you all for your dedication to language revitalization and for the speakers who hold on to their languages. We thank you and we celebrate you. I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that the First Peoples Cultural Council is grateful to have our offices located in the beautiful traditional and unceded territories of the Wasanich Nation people in the village of Wajathlep. Today, I'll be joined by my colleague Stephanie to facilitate this webinar. And before we kind of dive into the materials today, we'll take a moment to introduce ourselves. Tanshe Kiowao, Sydney Morda Shinekashun, I'm Chifnia, La Territoire Lakongan, Piwasenich Ostinia, Pinikiekwa. Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Moore, and I'm a language program coordinator with the First Peoples Cultural Council. I'm Métis, and I'm calling in from Lekwungen and Wasanich territories today, which is also where I was born. And yeah, I'm joined by Stephanie, who I'll let introduce herself as well.
Hi and good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Yates, and today I'm grateful to be calling in from the lands of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. And I'm, like Sydney, one of the language program coordinators here at FPCC, currently supporting the Pathways program. So it's so nice to see you all, and we look forward to sharing information with you today.
Not pictured on the screen, but joining us today, we also have our language program director, Aliana Parker, our language program manager, Thea Harris, and some of our language program associates, Amanda, Lindsay, and Lindy, as well as our navigator, Crystal. And then, as I mentioned earlier, but for those who might have missed it, this session today will be recorded. So we do welcome you to turn your cameras off if it makes you feel more comfortable. We also ask that you please stay muted until the end of the session, at which point we will have some time for some questions and answers. We'll welcome folks to either submit their questions via the chat, the Q&A function, or at that time, you're welcome to unmute and ask as well. All right. So during your time today, we're going to be sharing briefly about the First Peoples Cultural Council, who we are and what we do. And then we're going to dive into our 25-26 language program invitation for application. So what does this look like? What's the kind of evaluation process? And then we'll have some time for frequently asked questions, as well as questions and support. Also, you'll notice in our chat, there's just kind of our team members are sharing some tips and info should you have any questions or miss anything along the way. So first, I'll share a little bit about who is the First Peoples Cultural Council and what is it that we do. So the First Peoples Cultural Council was formed by government at the request of First Nations leaders more than 30 years ago in 1990. We're an Indigenous-run Crown corporation governed by BC First Nations Board and Advisory that represents the 36 languages, First Nations languages in BC. So we serve 36 First Nations languages in BC. We serve the 204 First Nations communities, as well as urban Indigenous organizations in British Columbia. We support with arts, language, and Indigenous cultural heritage revitalization through funding, training, professional development, resources, and coaching opportunities. There are roughly 6,000 to 7,000 languages spoken in the world today, and language diversity is directly connected to cultural and ecological diversity. Indigenous people recognize an essential connection between language and land. Regions with varied geography and high ecological diversity also have high language diversity. So BC is unique in Canada for its Indigenous language diversity. In 2007, BC was recognized by National Geographic as a language hotspot. There are 7 language families on 36 languages with over 90 dialects in BC, representing over 50% of the First Nations languages in Canada. Our vision is that Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage in British Columbia are thriving, that the knowledge and worldviews expressed through Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage are valued as essential to our collective well-being and human rights. Now we'll share a little bit about that 25-26 language program's invitation for application. I would like to first share that you will be applying on our new FPCC Grant Portal 2.0, and the application deadline is December 18th, 2024. So who is eligible to apply? The First Peoples Language Program strategies are available to support the revitalization of the 36 First Nations languages in British Columbia. The folks who are eligible are the 204 First Nations communities, Indigenous cultural language and education centers, Indigenous organizations, and Indigenous community groups. If you have any questions about eligibility, you're always welcome to reference our funding guide as well. So what's new in 2025-2026? First Peoples Cultural Council has launched our language program call for applications for 2025-2026, and there's some excited new changes to the application process this year. Over our time together, we will explain these changes and share how to submit an application for the language program funding. We have a new application and grant management process. We'll be adding our link to the chat to that new grant portal info. And these changes to the First Peoples Cultural Council language programs respond to communities' requests to reduce administrative work, to have increased flexibility, and to have sustained, reliable funding that can support programs over multiple years. We believe that these changes support us all towards moving towards our shared goal of a holistic funding model that is based on communities' long-term plans and goals for their languages. Stephanie?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to a little bit about the new grant portal. So as Sydney mentioned, we're currently transitioning to a new and improved grant portal 2.0. The language program application is now open on the new grant portal, and all applications will be completed using this new portal. You'll see the image on the right is our login screen. And if you had an existing account in our current grant portal, you will already be set up using that same email. Simply the first time when you go to log in, you'll click the forgot password, and it will prompt you to just follow some steps and create a new password, and then you'll have access into the system. If you run into any challenges, you can contact our support team or reach out to your current program contacts if you're currently a grant recipient. And that being said, our support team is monitoring the launch of each new grant carefully and continually improving the user experience. So as you navigate the new portal, please do let us know if you need any support or you have any feedback on your experience. The application process begins once you've accessed the new grant portal. That's where you'll be able to apply for the language program. The portal will take you through a number of steps to verify your identity through an onboarding process. And then once completed, you'll be able to start your draft application. We do recommend, though, that before you begin, you review the funding guide with your team and partners, and then determine the funding category, strategies, and term that you are going to draft an application for. Once you've gathered all of your information, we do recommend entering it into the new portal. Your draft will continue to be available to you to edit until you've completed it in full and submitted it online. We will share a link in our chat to a video on how to log in and get started on a grant application. So as Sydney mentioned, this year FPCC's 4 language programs for organizations have been woven together into a single application form. Previously, organizations had to prepare separate applications for each funding stream. Now, these 4 funding streams are available through one application. This includes the Pathways to Language Vitality Program, the Language Technology Program, the Language Revitalization Planning Program, and the Reclaiming My Language Program. The single funding application means that there will also be one funding agreement and one set of reports for the funding that is issued. This new change will significantly reduce administrative work for grant applicants and recipients, and it will mean less paperwork and fewer reports for the same funding. The combined model will provide greater flexibility with the funding and will support a more holistic approach to the interconnected language programming in the community. Another change this year, for the first time ever, FPCC is offering multi-year funding agreements. Funding is available for up to 3 years, from 2025 to 2028, depending on the funding category. Applicants may apply for 1 year through RISE category, or 1 or more years through the Roots, Grow, and Flourish categories. All applicants who receive only 1 or 2 years of funding will have the opportunity to reapply for continued funding in the subsequent years up to 2028. Multi-year funding agreements will provide recipients with the flexibility to carry funding over into subsequent years as needed in order to meet their program's goals. This year, FPCC's language funding is available in 4 different categories. These funding categories are expanded from the Pathways to Language Vitality program and respond to the varying levels of experience and program growth in communities across the province. These 4 funding categories are RISE, Root, Grow, and Flourish. This funding model reflects the cycles of growth and the flourishing potential of language revitalization work within communities. It also provides applicants who will be in various stages of this work a pathway to nurture positive stewardship for language revitalization goals. Each funding category has different criteria and offers a different funding level to meet the needs of the expanding language programs. The criteria for the funding categories are outlined in our funding guide, which is available on our website, but we'll also go through each category in this presentation. So then the first category is RISE funding. And so RISE funding is a grant up to $50,000 for 1 year of funding. RISE projects are awakening. RISE projects are exploring possibilities for language revitalization and have experience with up to 2 years of prior language grants. RISE organizations are building stewardship practices for long-term revitalization growth. RISE funding is offered for a single year. This funding is suitable for smaller teams that are just getting started on their language revitalization journey, or just have 1 or 2 project areas, or for teams that have more limited capacity to take on larger projects. RISE applicants will include 1 or more strategies or projects in their application and have received 1 or 2 previous language grants from FPCC or have never received a language grant from FPCC. Roots funding grants for up to $120,000 for year 1 and up to $60,000 for year 2. Roots projects are expanding. Roots organizations are becoming comfortable revisiting observations, experiences, practices, and monitoring of language revitalization work. Having completed several language projects, Roots organizations have absorbed the teachings from previous efforts that nourish strong roots for long-term community language goals. Roots funding is offered for 2 years with the potential for continuation into the 3rd year and can include multiple strategies. This funding is suitable for smaller teams that have experience working on language revitalization and are starting to expand into new areas. Roots applicants will include 2 or more strategies in their projects in their application. They have received between 3 and 8 previous language grants from FPCC, a cumulative total over 2 or more years, excuse me, and have at least one staff member dedicated full-time to the delivery of their project. They can also commit to offering a minimum of 100 hours per participant per year of immersion language learning for any immersion-based strategies in their project. And I think Sydney's going to take over from here.
Yeah. So next we'll share about our GROW funding. So GROW funding is grants up to 200,000 for year one and up to 100,000 for year two, subject to our funding availability. GROW organizations are established with extensive experience with multiple language strategies. GROW organizations have established language programs and practices that are spread throughout the community, and they can steward complex plans with many moving parts to achieve community language revitalization goals. GROW funding is offered for up to 2 years with the potential for a continuation for a third year and can include multiple strategies. This funding is suitable for groups that have begun or are about to begin the process of developing a strategic multi-year language plan with their community. GROW applicants include 2 or more strategies or projects in their application, including language revitalization plan development as a required strategy for this category. GROW applicants have received 9 or more language grants from FPCC of a cumulative total over 5 years or more. GROW applicants have a core project team of 2 or more people and at least 1 dedicated staff member full-time to the delivery of the project. GROW applicants can commit to offering a minimum of 200 hours per participant per year of immersion language learning for any immersion-based strategies selected, and demonstrate at least one active partnership with another department, organization, or community that will contribute meaningfully to the implementation of the proposed activities. And our Flourish funding. Flourish funding are grants up to $300,000 for year one and up to $150,000 for year 2 and 3, subject to funding availability. Flourish organizations have worked with their wider community to develop a strategic language revitalization plan and have begun or are about to put in that plan into action. Flourish organizations deftly weave multiple strategies together to forge a comprehensive web of mutually supportive activities that will advance the community's identified language goals. Flourish funding is offered for 3 years and includes a minimum of 3 strategies. This funding is suitable for well-established teams that have a language plan in place and are actively implementing multiple language revitalization strategies across the domains in the community. Flourish applicants include 3 or more strategies or projects in the application. They've received 10 or more language grants from FPCC as a cumulative total over 5 years or more. Flourish applicants will have a completed approved language plan that spans 3 or more years and includes an implementation plan, a budget which can be submitted with a budget which can be submitted with the application. Flourish applicants will have a language department or dedicated language team with at least 3 positions dedicated full-time to the delivery of the plan. Flourish applicants can commit to offering a minimum of 400 hours per participant per year of immersion language learning for any immersion-based strategies selected. And Flourish applicants will demonstrate at least one active partnership with another department, organization, or community that will contribute meaningfully to the implementation of the proposed activities. So application requirements. The funding guide outlines the program overview of all the strategies and each of those categories outlined, as well as the eligibility. Our funding guide also outlines the program timeline, available funding, application tips, and application assessment criteria. The completed application form will be submitted via that FPCC Grant Portal 2.0 and will require a budget that contains eligible expenses that fall within the guidelines or criteria outlined in the eligible expenses section of the funding guide. It'll demonstrate local community support and consultation and the participation of the community and its speakers. An application must also include governance, society, or organization documentation that is signed and dated. And strong applications include lots of information. You want to be clear about your ideas and strategies and how they connect together. And you want to include timelines that fit within the grant term. I'm going to invite Aliana.
Great. Thanks, Sydney. I wanted to share about the language status assessments. We've been receiving already a number of questions about these as they are a part of the language grant application form. So the language status assessment is a survey that helps communities track their progress towards language revitalization. So for communities that are already doing language programming, the language status assessment can really help to understand what's working and which strategies are resulting in the outcomes that are desired. And it can also help to identify areas that need maybe more work, more support, more programming. For those communities that maybe aren't yet doing programming for language, the language status assessment can provide a baseline of where the language is at in the community. The language status assessments are also really important to FPCC because they contribute to our report on the status of BC First Nations languages, which we publish every 4 years. This report is extremely influential in supporting our advocacy work with both the federal and the provincial governments. It helps us to advocate for increased funding for BC First Nations languages and for communities. And it also helps us see the progress that we're collectively making towards the revitalization of the languages. For example, with the most recent report, we saw that the number of language speakers, including Semi speakers, has been increasing. So that's some news to celebrate. So the language status assessment, as I mentioned, it's a survey that will be asking about things such as the number of speakers in the community, the number of semi-speakers, the number of people who are learning. It also asks about language programs, such as programs that might be happening in schools, in preschools, or any adult language programs. For anybody who submits a language status assessment, we're able to offer an honorarium of $500 for each completed assessment per community. So if you are submitting a language status assessment on behalf of your community, you or your community will be able to receive that $500 honorarium as just an acknowledgement for the time that it takes to complete the assessment. We wanted to let you know that while it is a part of the application form to note if you do or do not have a language status assessment, we are not asking you to complete the language status assessments before submission of the application. However, language status assessments will be due by April 2025 to be eligible for this upcoming language funding. So you're welcome to first complete your language application, even if that means you're clicking no, you don't have an up-to-date language status assessment, and then you can go back and complete the language status assessment after submission of your language program application. And we'll be providing more information about that. So don't worry, not having a language status assessment at the time of submission will not affect your eligibility. However, we will require an updated assessment before April 2025, and we will be in touch with you about that. Currently, our language status assessment forms are still on our old grant portal system, which is accessed at fpcc.ca/login. Thanks, Sydney.
Thank you. Yeah, and then here we just have a quick snapshot of the application timeline for you. So first, application deadline is December 18th, 2024. If you're interested in kind of a pre-review or some one-on-one support prior to the application deadline, we encourage you to reach out 2 weeks prior to December 18th. And then once the application period has closed, applications will be reviewed by FPCC and our peer review committee made up of impartial experts from around the province, language experts and knowledge keepers from around the province. That will be from January to February of 2025. And folks will receive the notification letters about the status of their application on March 2025 or early April 2025. And yes, Pamela, if an LSA needs updating, you will be contacted or you'll be notified. So application evaluation, what is it that the peer review committee is looking for? So once the submission period has closed, all received applications will undergo the peer review process, where a committee made up of community language champions from around the province will make funding recommendations based on their evaluation of the impact and feasibility of the proposed projects. The peer review committee looks for a fully fleshed out application that demonstrates expertise and capacity for the projects laid out or identified. So you'll want to tell the PRC what it is that you are doing. How does your project proposal fit into the current context of your language revitalization work in your community? Show them that there is community support and that your project is going to be including community participation and or result in community access to the materials created. You're going to want to tell the PRC how you're going to do this. You want to be clear and concise about your objectives and deliverables and provide in-depth work plans and budgets to demonstrate a level of preparedness. And finally, tell the PRC what your expected results are. How does your project work towards language revitalization in your community? We've also provided more information on how proposals are evaluated in our funding guide. And then here's a quick snapshot of the program timeline. Once notification letters are received, if you're notified that you're successful, this infographic here gives you a sense of what the reporting timeline would look like. Depending on how many years you may have applied for, you can kind of see there's different brackets representing each of the fiscal years. First, we have year 1 projects, which start April 2025 with an interim report in October 2025 and final reporting at fiscal year end on March or April of 2026. If you've selected to do 2 years, then the timeline would look like the first year, and you continue on into your year 2 project with another interim report due in October 2026 and a year-end or fiscal report due in March, April of 2027. If you've only chosen to do 2 years, you'd be closing out there. But say you have a 3-year or multi-year project, in that case, then you would also have interim reporting due October 2027, with that final report due March or April 2028. Over this next kind of half hour together, we've set aside some time to go over some frequently asked questions, but we'll also transition into our Q&A period where everyone will have a chance to ask their own questions. Again, you're welcome to ask questions via the chat, that Q&A function, or we'll have an opportunity to unmute your mics as well. But before we dive into that Q&A, we'll share some of our frequently asked questions. First, why are we doing this? Why have we rolled all 4 applications into one application form? Well, we heard you. These changes are in response to the feedback that we received. less paperwork to access funding, multi-year agreements for funding stability, more flexibility in how to deliver your projects, and funding requirements that reflect the context of language revitalization in your community. So our hope is this shift will help to meet all of those requests or feedback that we've received in previous years. Can multiple organizations from the same community apply? FPCC will be offering one funding opportunity per community or organization, and we strongly encourage collaboration. If more than one application from a community is submitted, the peer review committee will decide which project receives funding in order to avoid being in direct competition with other community members or groups. It is strongly advised that applicants collaborate and submit one unified proposal. This demonstrates to the PRC that there is support and consensus, and that the project plan has been designed with long-term goals in mind. Can I use grant funds to hire people to deliver this project? Yes, FPCC recognizes that successful delivery of your project requires significant administrative effort, including managing project timelines, budgets, and reporting requirements. So grant funds may be used to hire necessary staff for the project, but we do ask that you please take note of the eligible project expenses in FPCC's third-party policy in our language program funding guide. And what does partnership and collaboration look like? I might pass this one off to Aliana.
Sure thing. So you might notice, or you will notice, that for some of the funding categories, there is a requirement of having a partnership in place for that application. And we recognize that partnerships take many different forms. The reason why we are requesting those partnerships be in place is because we do acknowledge and recognize that when we all work together, we are able to get much farther. And so partnerships and collaborations really contribute to momentum of language projects and community. A partnership within a community could look like partnering with another community. It could look like partnering with a society or separate organization within the same community, or it could even look like one department of a community's governance partnering with another department. So for example, if your language work resides within perhaps the education department in your community, maybe your department is then partnering and collaborating with perhaps the health department in your community and working together to support the strategies and activities that you're outlining in your application. The partnerships do not have to be formalized with any kind of formal documentation, such as a terms of reference or a memorandum of understanding. However, we do ask that they be active partnerships. So if whoever is partnering is somehow actively contributing to your language project. It's more than simply a stamp of support, but that they are involved in some way. Maybe they are contributing participants from their department or from their organization. Perhaps they are offering, you have a staff person or a collaborator who is working with you on this project. Maybe they're offering space. So the partnership could look like a variety of different things. And we do invite you to just describe what that looks like within the application.
We're nearing the end of our time together, and I have a couple more things I'd like to share. But before I move into our kind of closing slides, I just want to make sure that there's no more lingering questions. We probably have time to take maybe two more. If there's anything that's really itching at someone's brain to ask.
Can I jump in and share, because there haven't been questions about this, but I expect there might be in future about the grant portal. Well, there was a question about it actually in the chat, and I want to elaborate on my answer from Pamela, who asked about the two separate grant portals. So we are in the throes of transitioning from one system to a new grant portal system that will be much improved. But if anybody has ever embarked on a technology project, they don't always go to plan. And so we are, as is very common, we're experiencing some hiccups in this process. So we're doing the very best we can to keep it as smooth as possible for you. What this means is that you will be submitting your new funding application on the new system, but all of your current, if you hold a current grant right now, all of that current grant and info will still be on the old and familiar grant portal. And so we'll be looking probably in the new year to be bringing those two systems into one, merging them all onto the new system. But that's going to take a little bit of time yet before we can make that happen. So for the next little while, once you've submitted your application on the new system, anything that you need to see with respect to all of your current grants, just to know that they will still be safe and sound where they've always been on the old grant portal. And then we'll keep you in the loop when we're ready to transition everything over to that new system. And many thanks for your patience with us as we navigate this. And do please reach out if you are having any challenges at all with accessing your application on the new Grant Portal 2.0. Please keep us in the loop. We're here to support you. We have a great IT team who's offering lots of support, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that that has zero impact whatsoever on your access to funding.
Thank you. All right. We also wanted to share one of the other resources that you're welcome to reach out to. We have our revitalization planning coaches. So the revitalization planning coaches are available to offer virtual support for First Nations communities and organizations in BC. They have access to FPCC tools and resources to support communities to build up their language revitalization initiatives through strategic language planning. And they provide ongoing project support and guidance to all FPCC grant recipients. So if it would be helpful to connect with a revitalization planning coach, you're more than welcome to reach out to them at coaches@fpcc.ca. And then finally, I want to share just a kind of a summary of next steps to think about as you're getting ready to apply. First, you'll want to review those funding guide and requirements. If you haven't yet, you'll next want to activate your FPCC Grant Portal 2.0 account. As previously mentioned, if you do have an existing account with FPCC's current or old grant portal, you should have received an invite to update your password to that new grant portal. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, we invite you to do so. And then third, it'd be time to pull that application together. And you're welcome to reach out if any questions come up at any point to languagegrant@fpcc.ca. We'll also be having some more drop-in Q&A sessions if any other questions are coming up as you work through the application and as the deadline approaches. So those Q&As will be on December 12th and 17th. And finally, just want to remind you of the application deadline, which is December 18th, 2024. And if you are looking for that kind of more hands-on support and review prior to applying, please try to reach out 2 weeks prior to that deadline.
Sydney, I just want to jump in there. The dates for the Q&A are actually incorrect. They're actually next week on the December 3rd and December 5th. We move those just to give folks a little more time before the application period closes. So yeah, again, those are on December 3rd and 5th. And I believe that those dates and links to register were a part of the invitation to apply email that you should have received.
Super. Thank you, Steph.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and then finally, if you do have any questions, if you want to stay connected, you can reach us at languagegrant@fpcc.ca. If you'd like to get connected with a revitalization planning coach, you can do so at coaches@fpcc.ca. If you'd like to check out more information on our language programs or check out that language program funding guide, you can check that out on our website, www.fpcc.ca. And specifically for that language grant piece, you can go /language grant to get right to that page. And of course, to apply, please apply via the new grant portal 2.0, www.fpcc.citizen1.ca. Yeah. And again, we just want to thank you for sharing time with us today. And again, thank you for your dedication to language revitalization. It's a real pleasure to walk alongside you.